Fox News Alert, the FBI launching an investigation into the man who went on a rampage in Oklahoma, beheading a coworker at the place where he was formerly employed. He'd been reportedly trying to convert coworkers to Islam. His Facebook page littered with anti-American sentiments, a picture of a beheading, and Osama bin Laden's portrait. So investigators find he had ties to terror. Joining us with more insight in that FBI probe is Chad Sweet. He's former DHS Chief of Staff and a CIA official. He's now CEO of the Chertoff Group. Chad, thanks for coming on this morning.
Glad to be here.
So the Washington Post in a front page piece this morning says that the FBI found a photograph of Osama bin Laden on this guy's Facebook page, video of a beheading, an Islamic beheading, but that they're not convinced that this had really anything to do with his Islamic beliefs, and they're treating it as an instance of workplace violence, that it actually said that. Should we have confidence that they know what they're doing?
Well, I think we saw in the case of the Fort Hood shooting that this administration was very slow to call a spade a spade. And I think what happened is eventually the evidence was so overwhelming, they eventually categorized it as terrorism. We'll see that in this case, too. But I'm hopeful that the administration is learning from that experience. And this is a do-over, and we'll watch with great interest to see whether they've learned from that past experience.
But why the hesitance? A guy who converts to Islam, shouting Islamic slogans, copying Islamic beheadings in the workplace, and we don't call it related to Islam because why? Why don't we want to say that out loud?
Yeah, I think you'll see this change very shortly. The only thing that's causing a pause, I think, is the fact that the triggering event was the termination of his employment. So that's the one thing, Tucker, I think that's caused this temporary pause. But I think you'll see very quickly the Bureau will most likely come to that conclusion quickly.
So sort through the propaganda for us, would you, and get to the truth about ISIS and the threat it may pose to this country and to other civilized nations. Apparently, Iraqi intelligence says they've uncovered an ISIS plot to attack New York and Paris subways. Is that, do you think, an actual threat, and what's being done to prevent it?
Well, I think what we have to recognize is when we drew down our presence in Iraq and Afghanistan, we have limited our visibility into their activities. We no longer have the human intelligence footprint that we used to have. So we have to be very careful that just because we haven't detected a plot doesn't mean there isn't one. And so I think things like the Prime Minister's indication that there might be a plot against public transportation, we know that that's a threat vector that the terrorists have been obsessed with, whether it's planes, whether it's subways. We've seen that in the Madrid bombings in 2004. We saw it again in London, also in Moscow. So you're seeing all across this country, both federal, state, local law enforcement stepping up their presence in all forms of public transportation.
Huh. And so should we feel safe or not? If you're in New York City, should you worry before you ride the subway?
Well, the terrorists win when they make us live in fear. So I think just like in Israel, we're going to have to learn how to live under this new reality, which is a persistent threat. But in Israel, if a bomb goes off on a bus, the next day, people get on the bus. In our country, if and when that happens, we're going to have a learning curve, and eventually we'll be as resilient as the Israelis.
That would be a good thing. Chad Sweet, thanks a lot for coming on this morning, giving us perspective on that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker.